Hello and welcome to Dining with Death, Dining with the Damned. On this playlist, I discuss criminals who have been sentenced to die. We talk about their crimes, we talk about the events leading up to their execution, and then I show you and eat their last meal. I'm Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Last December, I covered the case of the Dayton Christmas killing spree, and it's about a group of 4 teenagers that killed people in Dayton, Ohio over Christmas 1992. The media dubbed the group the Devils of Dayton. Today we are going to discuss the leader of that gang, well, at least one of the leaders of that gang, and what became of him after the horrible acts he committed. Today we are discussing Marvallous Keene. I had pretty much no luck in finding any information about Marvallous Keene's childhood, his school years, his upbringing. I pretty much struck out there. The first information that is readily available online kind of starts with his murder spree. Seeing as how I have already covered that case and those acts, there will be a little bit of a repeat here, but I still wanted to cover Marvallous' execution. From everything I could gather, Marvallous Keene seems to have been a really good kid for most of his life. In fact, when he was arrested for multiple murder, he didn't even have an arrest record. So what happened? What happened to this man to make him go from a law-abiding citizen, he was a good student, he was a nice son, to a dangerous, violent criminal? Apparently, when Marvallous was in his late teens, his brother, who he loved and admired, was killed during a robbery. This had a profound effect on Marvallous Keene. It is said that after his brother died, his entire attitude changed. He went from a relatively calm and pleasant person to someone who was prone to extreme mood swings, and he even acted out violently towards his own family members. His behavior changed so severely that people were actually afraid of him. He became known as a volatile and angry person. He got into a very serious argument with his father, and that ended with his father throwing him out of the house. And from that point on, Marvallous was estranged from his family and had little contact with his father. Marvallous had a girlfriend named Laura Taylor, who was only 16 years old at the time. In researching this case, I have formed an opinion that Laura Taylor was actually as vicious, if not more vicious, than Marvallous Keene. She was a very dangerous person. Marvallous ends up being executed for these crimes, but Laura could not be because she was a minor when they were committed. But make no mistake, she was absolutely ruthless and took lives like you or I would swat a fly. In 1992, Marvallous and Laura found themselves estranged from their families at Christmas time. I have to think that being away from their families, watching others enjoy the holiday season, might have played into their behavior somehow, but maybe that's just me being optimistic. Maybe these people would have committed terrible crimes regardless. The couple, Marvallous and Laura, had 2 friends that they were spending a lot of time with. One of those friends was Heather Matthews, and the other was DeMarcus Smith, and they were also just teenagers. The 4 called themselves the Downtown Posse, which is just such a cheesy name for this little group. All 4 of the members were estranged from their families, which is sad to be away from your family at Christmas, but it certainly doesn't excuse what they did. Laura Taylor said to the group, "Let's get some drama in our lives." You know, for a lot of people that might mean, gossiping or going out for drinks or something, but I mean, for Laura Taylor, that's not what it meant. Basically, this sad little group was bored and angry, and they were looking to start trouble. If they were unhappy, other people were going to be unhappy as well. Such an unfair way to deal with your problems, making them other people's problems, pushing your problems off onto other people. It's why I think a lot of us have a hard time finding sympathy for these types of people. We all have problems, but we can't take them out on other people. Like I said, I just covered this case a few months back. Today I'm going to focus on Marvallous and his execution, so I will just briefly go over the timeline of events that led him to his eventual fate. Laura and Heather lured a man named Joseph Wilkerson into his home with a promise of sex. They tied him to his bed, and then Marvallous Keene stepped from the hallway and murdered the man in cold blood. The gang then lived in his house for the days following the murder. That same night, an 18-year-old woman named Danita Gillette was using a payphone outside a neighborhood market in West Dayton. The gang walked by her. Marvallous Keene raised his weapon and said to her, "Merry Christmas," and shot her. Danita slumped down into the phone booth, and then Marvallous shot her again multiple times as she begged for her life. Danita had 50 cents in her pocket at the time of her death. The gang then robbed her of her gym shoes, her jacket, and her book bag. This murder really bothers me, and it even bothered the hardened cops in Dayton because it was so senseless. It was basically violence for the sake of violence, and not only did Danita lose her life, but her child lost their mother. Danita had a baby, and she was working a restaurant job and going to school, studying drafting in order to provide a good life for that baby. She wasn't doing anything but minding her own business, and she lost her life simply because she happened to be using the phone on the same street these people were walking on. It's just absolutely tragic. Over the course of the next couple of days, the gang also shot Heather Matthews' ex-boyfriend, whose name is Jeffrey Wright. They shot him in the legs 4 times, leaving him with very serious injuries, but he did survive. He was living in a flop house, and unfortunately, there were other people living there that saw the shooting. The gang would go back for those unfortunate people later on. On Christmas Day, someone called the police and told them that there was a body in a crashed car. Officers found 19-year-old Richard Maddox slumped over in the driver's seat of a car that had crashed into a nearby corner. It turns out that this young man was Laura Taylor's ex-boyfriend. Laura went to his house and lured him outside and into the car with her. Well, what Richard did not know is that Marvallous, DeMarcus, and Heather were following he and Laura in a car they had carjacked earlier in the day. When Richard noticed they were being followed, he got nervous, and so Laura pulled out a gun and shot him in the head, killing him instantly. Laura then got into the car with the trio, and Marvallous drove her away from the crime scene. Marvallous and the group then decided to commit a robbery. The 4 of them went into the Shortstop Mini Mart on the day after Christmas. They walked in and demanded all the money in the cash register. The woman working the register, 38-year-old Sarah Abraham, did exactly as she was asked. She gave them the money, she turned over everything she had, and Marvallous shot and killed her anyway. A store customer, a man named Jones Pettis, was also shot, but he survived. Then the gang went back to the flop house where Jeffrey Wright, Heather Matthews' ex-boyfriend, had been shot, and they forced the 2 people who witnessed that shooting into their car. They were 16-year-old Wendy Cottrell and 18-year-old Marvin Washington. They drove these 2 people to a city gravel dump and executed them there to prevent them from identifying them in the shooting of Jeffrey Wright. So over the course of just 48 hours, 6 people had been murdered. Joseph Wilkerson, Danita Gillette, Sarah Abraham, Richard Maddox, Wendy Cottrell, and Marvin Washington all lost their lives just for coming across the paths of these ruthless killers. During the murder spree, the gang had carjacked a vehicle, like I said, from the parking lot of an area gas station, and that car ends up getting them caught. An alert police officer noticed the vehicle, which had been reported stolen after the carjacking. He pulled the car over and approached it. What this officer did not know is that Laura Taylor, who, again, I feel is just as vicious as Marvallous, told Marvallous to shoot and kill the officer, but Marvallous would not do it. So if there is a single redeeming quality about this man, that's definitely it. Laura Taylor, I'm frankly surprised she didn't kill the officer herself. Surprisingly, the group put their hands up and surrendered without a fight. This officer found out later on, during their confessions, just how close he came to dying that day at the hand of a group of murderers who, at this point, had nothing to lose. The downtown posse is taken into custody. Marvallous and Heather are the only 2 adults in the group. Heather immediately takes a plea deal and says she will tell police whatever they want to know if they will take the death penalty off the table for her. They agree to do that, and of course that leaves Marvallous as the main target for prosecution. Laura, Heather, and DeMarcus all get life without parole, and Marvallous Keene is sentenced to death, despite pleas from his mother to spare his life.
During the sentencing phase of his trial, Keene and his mother took the stand.
I know he has to be punished, but I ask you, I beg of you, don't take his life.
I never meant for nothing like this to ever happen.
At the time, family members of the victims weren't swayed by Keene's emotional display.
After the required appeals process was complete, Marvallous Keene was set to be executed. On July 21st, 2009, he was given his last meal, which of course I will show you. He was taken to Lucasville from death row at the Ohio State Penitentiary in Youngstown. He was given a medical evaluation and staff said he was calm and quiet. Keene did not ask for any special witnesses or time with his family, and his family did not attend. His two defense attorneys were the only witnesses for Marvallous. When asked if he had any last words, he said, "No, I have no words." And with that, he was put to death by lethal injection. Marvallous Keene's execution was the 1,000th execution since the United States reinstated the death penalty in 1976. The other 3 members of the downtown posse remain in jail and they will never be paroled. So what did Marvallous Keene request for his last meal? I'm going to show you. It was quite a feast. Look at this. I can barely get it all in the frame. I had to back the camera really far back. Marvallous Keene went out on a full stomach, I think it's safe to say. He had a pound of white grapes, a mango. He had 2 plums that I could not find in any grocery store in my area, could not find plums. He had French fries. He had onion rings. He had a pound of fried shrimp with cocktail sauce. He had a porterhouse steak with A1. And he had 2 cream sodas and 2 Pepsis, along with dinner rolls and butter and German chocolate cake for dessert. Let's taste this amazing feast. Apparently, according to one woman on the internet, I should eat these meals and be really sad because it was someone's last meal. Not gonna happen. First of all, this is their last meal request, so I'm sure they enjoyed it. Secondly, when I eat, I'm happy. That's just the way it is, and I'm not gonna pretend I'm not. And thirdly, I have a hard time finding a lot of empathy for some of these people. I'm not gonna sit here and cry crocodile tears over, the fact that somebody got what was coming to them after they killed people. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I personally am on the fence with the death penalty. It doesn't deter crime and it costs more money to execute someone than it does to let them sit in jail. But this is our system. This is the reality of the American justice system, and I explore it on this channel. If you don't like it, you don't have to watch. Of course, I'm gonna start with the steak. It was really good. Fried shrimp, is there anything really better than fried shrimp? That is so good. He had French fries. A lot of these guys request French fries. I was surprised to hear they don't really get fries in jail. They're so cheap, it seems like it would be something that the jail would make. I don't know. French fries. They're great. He had onion rings with ketchup. I prefer mine with fry sauce, which is a Utah thing, and it's great. He had a mango. He had grapes. And then, like I said, he had the plums, the 2 plums that I couldn't find anywhere in my grocery store. It's December. They're a fall fruit. I thought they'd have them, but nobody did. He had dinner rolls with butter. He had 2 Pepsis. I think it said bottles, but I couldn't find bottles. Full sugar soda. That's something I never let myself have. And he had 2 cream sodas. Ooh, that's good. And last but not least, he had German chocolate cake. It's good. Well, that was a heck of a meal, right? I had a bite of everything and I'm kind of full. Marvallous was a big guy and he could definitely eat. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Damned. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. It helps me out a lot. Stay safe and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.